In just a little over a decade, gas pumps in California could be well on their way to becoming a thing of the past. On Thursday, the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, voted to adopt sweeping regulations that would end the sale of gas-powered vehicles in America's most populous state by 2035. Instead, the state will require all new vehicles sold there to be fully electric or plug-in electric hybrids that could also have gasoline engines. Officials say that would put them on track to cutting smog-causing pollution from light-duty vehicles in 2037 by 1/4. Leanne Randolph is the chair of the CARB.
With the phasing out of new sales of internal combustion engine vehicles, this could well be the final set of major criteria pollutant emission standards for new light-duty conventional vehicles.
Thursday's announcement may be good news for car makers like Toyota, which is investing heavily in plug-ins. However, Tesla, which only produces electric vehicles, has called for an even faster route to all-electric sales. But it also said the new rules will be, quote, extremely challenging even in California. These rules still need federal approval from President Joe Biden and the Environmental Protection Agency. The American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers Trade Association has urged them to reject what they've called an unlawful ban. The White House and EPA did not immediately comment. Biden has previously declined to set a firm date on phasing out gas-only vehicles. The EPA is working on setting U.S. emissions limits through at least 2030.
U.S. President Joe Biden called on Republicans to reject MAGA and vote Democrat in November at his first political rally ahead of the midterms. At an earlier fundraising stop on Thursday, he accused Trump-allied Republicans of edging towards semi-fascism. Later, Biden took the stage in Maryland to appeal to what he called mainstream Republicans.
The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. They embrace political violence. They don't believe in democracy. This is why, in this moment, those of you who love this country, Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving America than the MAGA Republicans are destroying America.
The rally kicks off a coast-to-coast tour for Biden as he tries to lend support to Democrats and stop Republicans from taking control of Congress, in part by emphasizing stark differences between the parties and to tout recent legislative victories on climate change and gun control. Republicans hope they can ride voters' unhappiness with high inflation, as well as cultural resentment from the party's majority white base. They also have a historical advantage, as the party in control of the White House usually loses seats in their first midterms. Democratic pollsters said Biden is polling lower than most, if not all, of the actual Democratic candidates running for competitive seats in Congress, often by double digits. His latest approval rating is 41%.
Data released Thursday may tamp down on recession fears. The U.S. Commerce Department said gross domestic product dropped more moderately than initially thought in the second quarter, shrinking 0.6%, a revision from an earlier reported 0.9% drop. Still, it makes for the second quarter in a row of negative growth. But while the two straight quarterly decreases in GDP meet the standard definition of a recession, broader measures of economic activity suggest a slow pace of expansion. Gross domestic income rose by 1.4% in the second quarter. Retail sales remained strong. Industrial production hit a record high in July, and the labor market shows growth.
Let me speak to one other issue, the GDP. And whether or not we are in a recession. Both Chairman Powell and many of the significant banking personnel and economists say we're not in a recession.
Thursday's data lends support to the case President Joe Biden made in July that the economy is transitioning from a rapid rebound to slower but steady growth. But recession fears persist, as the Federal Reserve appears to keep raising interest rates in an effort to curb inflation.
This is a so-called revenge message written on a Ukrainian artillery shell. They've become an outlet for those struggling with grief, like Yuliana Romanev. She paid for a shell to bear the name of her favorite uncle, Andriy.
This is quite a personal signature. There could have been many of them, because war took away my relative, my friends, people who were exemplary to me in many ways. You feel powerless.
Romanev is among hundreds who have donated to Revenge4, a local crowdfunding website that raises money for the Ukrainian army by selling the messages. It's raised over $67,000 so far, and creator Alexander Arhat says all the messages have a story behind them, from friends to family, or even pets lost in the war.
We are not raising money for crime. We raise money to help the army that wages righteous, defensive, and liberation war. So, we raise money to destroy the enemy that came on our land. Whoever considers it unfair could just not donate.
For Irina Paramarchuk, sponsoring a shell has been almost therapeutic.
I am a very kind person, but I will be happy if someone suffers on their side. 1-to-1, no more, no less. They should suffer the same as I. I can't take up the rifle because I wasn't taught to do it. But I am happy that in such a way this projectile showed them my pain and my hatred towards them.
Revenge4 isn't the only website of its kind, and support for such crowdfunding groups has been growing. Thousands have died, and over a third of Ukraine's 41 million people have been forced from their homes. Russia has repeatedly denied its forces are aiming at civilian targets during what it calls a special military operation.
Novak Djokovic, the former world #1, announced on Thursday that he will not compete at this year's U.S. Open. Djokovic up till now has refused to get vaccinated against COVID-19, making it impossible for him to enter the United States, where travelers are still required to show proof of vaccination. In a post on Twitter, he wrote, quote, "Sadly, I will not be able to travel to NY this time for U.S. Open. Good luck to my fellow players. I'll keep in good shape and positive spirit and wait for an opportunity to compete again." The Serbian previously said he was prepared to miss Grand Slam tournaments that require participating players to be vaccinated against COVID.
Is it good to be home?
His position led to the 35-year-old being unable to defend his Australian Open crown earlier in the year, after being deported from the country over his vaccination status. The United States Tennis Association described Djokovic's absence from the U.S. Open, where he has hoisted the trophy 3 times and reached the final on 6 other occasions, as unfortunate, but looked forward to having him back at Flushing Meadows next year.